Hello and welcome to CivilNet. I am Mushak Hazarian, a reporter here at CivilNet. We are joined in studio by the former executive director of the ANCA Western Region and the Glendale area, formerly also a consultant for political campaigns across the United States, and currently the head of the START Group, which is a political consulting agency, Elen Asatryan. Elen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We want to talk to Elen about things that have taken place in the diaspora, as well as the connection that they have here to Armenia. And specifically, I want to start out with the rallies that happened on April 19th and April 22nd. I want to know, how did those come about? Who was involved? Were organizations involved in the structure of that, or the putting that together?
Sure. Well, the first one that took place was on April 19th. The idea really spurred from a couple of local youth that really wanted to do something in joining in solidarity with the youth and the people of Armenia. And so they reached out to the likes of me, Mayor Zari Sinanian, and of course City Clerk Ardi Kasakian for assistance in helping organize something locally. And we, of course, noticed that there wasn't anything really being organized, and really wanted to join the movement because it was something that we couldn't allow for the diaspora not to have a voice, and really show the support to the people here. So the first one was really, there were no organizations that were involved, and which is actually perhaps the first time that was the case, especially in the city of Glendale, or just in general in the diaspora. So that led to, the entire, mind you, there's a street named Artsakh Street now in Glendale, and so we thought it was significant for us to hold the first rally there. It's also a closed street, so we didn't really need to worry about permits and so forth. And then, of course, when Nikol Pashinyan was taken here, we literally got on the phone at 2 in the morning, and by 4 a.m. decided that we're going to be doing another rally on April 22nd. That led to perhaps the largest gathering of Armenians in the city of Glendale. And of course, once we announced it, there was another group that was also organizing something similar at the steps of Glendale City Hall. But we wanted to make sure that no one felt like we were somehow, taking this cause and making it our own. And this wasn't about any one individual or organization, but really to stand in solidarity with the people in Armenia. So we reached out to the individuals that were organizing at City Hall, and because theirs was going to start about an hour earlier, they actually agreed to march over to Artsakh Street from City Hall and join us in our rally at 8 p.m., which was about an hour after theirs was going to start. That led to an impromptu march down to the consulate, which is again maybe a 10-minute walk from Artsakh Street. That was really the largest gathering. There was about 8,000 people that showed to the streets, and I have to tell you, it was the most diverse crowd of Armenians I had ever seen in a gathering like that. And there's kind of a new hope that's also been born, I think, in the diaspora as Armenia is going through its own transition of how to integrate the different fractions. I think that what happened in Armenia is having a significant effect on how the diaspora will move forward in community organizing and really the general involvement from the public.
Interesting, and that's something that I am going to want to touch on, but I wanted to go back. You said that there was 8,000 people and it was a very diverse crowd. What was the reaction from the community when they heard that this march or the event was going to happen? And then did you see a change? Did there not need to be a change? How did the community interact with each other as they came to that rally?
Really, I don't think I've ever seen our folks and our community members so unified. I could say that I think the one exception has really been the centennial of the Armenian genocide, when there was 180,000 Armenians that marched to the Turkish consulate. That really had that same spirit, but I think more significantly, and not that they didn't participate in the April 24th marches, but this was really you saw a larger involvement, and if not a greater involvement by the community that is originally from Armenia. And I think many organizations throughout the years have made many attempts to integrate that community in particular in their works, but there's always been some sort of gap that I think over the years have maybe been filled a little bit, but this particular movement created this whole new energy within that community to want to be involved and to speak their voice. I think that has a lot to do with their connection to Armenia today. And of course, you know, with every year that passes, they're also the community now that is assimilated enough where they feel like they can take part in what's happening in the diaspora.
And to go on that, that's you mentioned that this movement, both here in Armenia as well as in the diaspora, specifically in Glendale, could be that chance to spark sort of larger community activations, political engagement. How do you see that happening? Is that something that people who have been involved are going to be able to pick up and move forward, or is that a newer group or a younger group that'll take that?
I think there's a whole new group of people that have now been engaged and are active that were never active before. And I think, you know, throughout all my years in like community organizing and voter registration and trying to get our community out to vote in large numbers, I think one of the biggest difficulties we've had is getting especially the Hayastansi community to know that they have a voice and they can make that difference in their government. There was always this skepticism that came with it, and you know, completely understandable given the system that they came from. You also noticed that in the communities that came from, like, you know, Syria and Iran, but they had already been to the United States for quite some time, so that assimilation had already kind of like taken place. This is the first time I'm really seeing, you know, the large number of Hayastansis that are being involved, and I very much hope that this won't be like the end, like it won't end with this particular cause, but it'll give birth to new ideas and very heavy direct involvement in politics and in areas that we have Armenian communities there.
And I want to touch on that and move forward with that idea there. How is it moving forward that the diaspora can, or how do you see the diaspora getting involved with vis-a-vis Armenia and issues that impact Armenia? As we've seen a lot in the past, a lot of the diaspora involvement has been genocide specific. And so how do you see that moving forward?
Well, I think aside from the Armenian genocide, we see a number of nonprofits that try to help Armenia in both fundraising and creating programs here and creating a connection between the community there and different parts of Armenia and Artsakh, of course. But I think more specifically, this issue allows for, I'll give you an example. There's a rally that's also being organized for the same time that we're going to have the voting take place here. The individuals that were originally the organizers of the first rally, and we've been, regardless of the fact that Mayor Sinanian and I have been here, we've been still communicating with the group. You know, they actually went and met with the organizations that, you know, support this cause and want to be involved. And the feedback that we've received even from those meetings is that it's this unified front that really hasn't, you know, truly been there before, where everybody is just stepping up and willing to help however they can, but no one is trying to take it as their own movement, right? And I think there's something humbling about that, and very hopeful for the future of our people and our communities.
Absolutely. I want to ask you, you're now here in Yerevan. You flew in just the other morning. What made you come? What made you decide, and how did that decision come about? Well,
I think, I mean, I booked my flight at midnight for the 4 p.m. flight, which got delayed. But I think the number one reason was I felt like I had certain experiences, especially in community organizing and you know, political organizing, and that my efforts here could be, and my experience could be helpful on the ground here. I think it's really important for us to have that tie with Armenia and be able to contribute in a much more direct way. And I think I'll kind of go back to your previous question, because you know, these are really tied together. Yes, we've had like the Ministry of Diaspora that attempts to reach out but I don't think there's been any significant work that has resulted from their efforts. We have Armenians throughout the world that are experienced and experts in various fields of organizing and development and so forth, but their talents are not being utilized for the betterment of Armenia. These are all individuals that, if asked and if given the opportunity, would step it up and actually deliver in making it a more democratic, more inclusive environment in Armenia. And so I really hope if there's one thing that I hope, changes, or this movement changes between the diaspora and Armenia, is that the Armenian ministries would take into account the experts that we have in the different fields and really utilize them, not on a surface, like, you're invited to a conference, so please come hear what we have to say, but rather, hey, we are organizing this. I know you're an expert in this field. Please come join the team and help us organize. And so those are the big differences that I ideally like to see moving forward.
So really, again, something that we've heard before, where it's not just being invited into, as you said, but actually participating in the creation of and putting the ideas forth that would then spark or create the movement, or create a rally or something along those lines.
Well, I'll tell you this. I did come out for the Pan-Armenian Diaspora Conference last time, on my own dime, wanting to somehow contribute, right? And I'm a very simple example of, I think, what a lot of diasporans feel. I went to the conference, and within the first hour or an hour and a half, I'm basically being asked to just listen, and the format in which the conference was really organized made me feel like I'm being lectured to. And so here's somebody that came in with certain backgrounds that you could have utilized to actually have a healthy, constructive conversation, versus being, here's our plan. And then, 5 minutes or 10 minutes at the end of each panel, well, give us your feedback. What did they do with the feedback? And so the structure that was set up, for example, even in that conference, I didn't go to the rest of it because I felt like it was a waste of my time. And I'd rather be going and meeting with organizations that are in Armenia to see how I can potentially directly help each of the organizations, whether it was, TUMO, or there's a large movement for women's rights and so forth. So causes that I very much care about, but I feel like I can be productive somewhere. And I think that's something that is shared amongst many in the diaspora.
One of the things that you've done with the different groups that you've worked with has been, as you mentioned before, voter registration, voter drives. How is it that you think that you can engage with, or how do you see the elections taking place here moving forward? How do you think that the diaspora can be involved in some of those places?
So I do think that this is a critical turning point for Armenia, and this leads back to having individuals that come from those very different fields that can contribute. I think I was here during the local elections where I served as an elections monitor, where I firsthand witnessed people, they weren't even hiding it. That was the most disturbing part, where right outside the polling location, people are being handed off money in exchange for a ballot and all of that. And it's one thing for you to hear, it's another thing for you to see it. I think given this turning point, that we have a great opportunity to set up a system where there's actually a free, fair, democratic election, where people actually feel like their vote and voice really matters. But that takes bringing in certain structures and committees together to see how you're going to actually implement that. I know that a lot of folks will talk about how Armenia is very different in its history because in that particular area, but the truth of the matter is that intimidation factor is not exclusive to Armenia. Very much so in Los Angeles, in Glendale. Over the years, if I have to count, we used to have poll monitors at every polling location when we knew there's going to be a large Armenian turnout, because the reality was that a lot of people had language barriers. They would show up to the polling location and then they were either like not provided a ballot, or they were told to go to another polling location. And so that was actually, that is still like in line with like hindering somebody to make their voice heard. So we're really, really blessed with having a large group of people that have that campaign background back in LA and in the United States. And I'm pretty sure throughout the world that can help contribute to establish free and democratic elections in Armenia.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens here moving forward, certainly with Nikol Pashinyan, as he said, to echo your point that the free, fair, and transparent elections are a big priority for them, and to be able to strengthen the community's belief, the country's belief in those elections and the results of those elections. Elen, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Again, we've been joined by Elen Asatryan, formerly the head of the ANCA Western Region, currently the head of the START Group, a political consulting agency based out of California. You've heard us discuss different types of issues that have been brought up over the course of the movement, whether that is voting, community organizing, political involvement, elections, and then also the perception of fairness and belief that the people have in their institutions. And so please stick with CivilNet moving forward, as we will be providing you further discussions, interviews, as well as reports into what is happening here in Armenia and across the diaspora. Again, I am Mushak Khazarian. Thank you very much for watching CivilNet TV.